Hey guys, for my paper, I wrote about ESL students and teachers. I wrote about some facts and statistics surrounding ESL students and teachers, such as where are they mostly located, what's the ratio between teachers and students, and just what's the most common language spoken among them. I also wrote about ESL's teaching strategies. What are some of them that they use to promote education amongst their students? Is what's the most like the common philosophy found among them, right? So one of the most statistics I found was most of ESL students are actually located in the west side of the United States, or the southwestern side as well, actually, as we can tell by some of these states, such as California, Colorado, Texas, Kansas, Nevada, and New Mexico. And within these states, most of the ESL students you're usually going to find them in urbanized communities and less in rural communities. Now, why these statistics are so significant is if you can take this into consideration how it affects policy making in different places. In some places, such as in more urbanized communities in more of the western sides states of the United States, you might find more progressive policies that include ESL education, whereas in more rural communities in any state, you're going to find less progressive policies made. Now, another statistic that I find interesting and hits pretty close to home for me is how 75% of ESL students speak Spanish in their households. It's over 3/4, and which makes it the number one most common spoken language in ESL households. Now, to my surprise, English is actually only the fifth most commonly spoken language. This is pretty significant just simply because of the fact that that means a majority of these kids are most likely going to be exposed to English through either school and media, just overall social media, which is not necessarily the most reliable source of education where you can just learn English. Now, after taking all this into consideration, we have to ask ourselves, well, just how many are ESL teachers out there to help with this dilemma that we face as a nation? Well, to my amazement and surprise, I found out that for every one teacher, there are 15 students kind of living the teacher with the thought of, are you kidding me? And they should think that way because these are not ideal circumstances. This is a definite problem. This shows how much more we need. We need many more ESL teachers to help with these students. Some of the statistics, some of the facts we'll see later on. You may think they go against this, but it's not necessarily. But because we need more ESL teachers to show more attention to each individual students, and that's the kind of attention these students need. It's more specialized, more modified in that regard. And we're going to see that later on in the strategies. Now, what are some ESL teaching strategies? And more specifically, what is the major philosophy around them, right? And the idea behind it is actually some of the regular philosophies we have for just overall writing and thinking, and which is explained by this one particular quote that I found in a study. Teachers should create environments that are aimed at consciousness raising about the importance of content-related aspects of composing first, then activities that attend to grammar-related aspects of writing. And this is pretty consistent with how we're taught just overall English writing, ELA overall, is we want to focus, teachers focus more on the idea, the concept, the abstract concepts more so than just on the grammar and the technicalities behind writing. And this is the kind of mentality we should be also focusing on the students, the ESL students. Now, to enforce this kind of thinking, to promote this kind of philosophy, a lot of teachers have actually started to encourage the idea, and this is the one where you think this is contradicting the previous statistic, is instead of one-on-one teaching, more focused on mainstream teaching, which basically means put the ESL students in just your regular classroom instead of having focused them on one-on-one isolated classroom. The idea behind this is that you actually want these students to have the same standards and meet the same expectations as you would any other student in their age. Now, is it going to be exactly that? Not necessarily, but that is the ultimate goal. That is the intention. And that's what we're trying to achieve. Now, does that necessarily mean we don't want more one-on-one help and consideration? No, that's not necessarily the case. For each classroom, actually, one thing I would like to further research on is whether or not we should implement like an ESL teacher within that group. So not just one teacher, we also have another teacher in the group for a group of ESL kids that can help with with work and concepts and ideas, going back to this whole philosophy thing. So yeah, we can still have that kind of interaction within the mainstream classroom. Other strategies that they've used to try and encourage their students is actually imagery, as I've clearly liked to use in my own project. This is actually a specific doodle that I did personally with some of my students that I taught at a Buffalo public school. They originally didn't know what wings were, obviously in English, but as soon as I drew it, as soon as I showed them what they were, and I flapped my arms around, they immediately understood exactly what I was talking about. And it just further shows that these students know and understand most of the concepts that our regular students also know. It's just a matter of being able to express them in a different language and in different modes and genres. Other strategies that teachers have used, and this is a very significant one, is teamwork. You don't want students to work by themselves. You want them to cooperate and collaborate with each other as much as possible. And a big one, a real big one, that's actually surprising for me at first, but it actually makes perfect sense, is do not rely on translation. Students should be trying to try and figure out the common sense, the logic, the meaning behind the words themselves, and they should be teachers should not be relying on translation to try and get them to understand the words, because they can then become overly reliant on that, and that's not the goal. That really isn't. Now, why is this all so significant for me? Well, though I was never really I never went to ESL classes, it was still a bit of a struggle for me to learn English. I remember the first time I presented myself in a classroom. It was one of the most humiliating moments I had, because I thought I was so confident I would do so well, and I could not stop stuttering and just eating my own words. I had a horrible accent, and heck, I still do at times. And it's something that hits close to home for me. Some further research that can be done about this is just what I mentioned over here about including ESL teachers within the regular classroom, whether or not it's favorable for students to basically be more focused on one-on-one or mainstream. What I found does encourage this more, but it's still a highly debatable topic. And yeah, this is it. This is my project. There's still a variety of ways you can go with this, such as also policies. What are things that have already been implemented? What can be improved on? This is a very broad topic that can be explored. All right, guys, thank you so much for your time, and I hope you guys have a good rest of the semester. We're almost there. Bye bye.